Stop right now. Go to your refrigerator and take out that jar of mayonnaise you've trusted for years. Look closely at the label. What you are holding is no longer the real food your family grew up eating. It is a highly engineered, chemically preserved illusion. I just spent the last 6 weeks systematically tracking exactly when and how our most trusted mayonnaise brands quietly changed their formulas behind our backs. What I uncovered is a blueprint of corporate deception, and 5 of the biggest names in the supermarket are not going to like this video. Here is their exact playbook. A beloved family-owned brand builds generational trust over decades by using high-quality, authentic ingredients, real eggs, good oil, simple vinegar. Then, a massive multinational conglomerate buys them out for billions of dollars. The very next day, the relentless cost-cutting begins. But they don't change the recipe overnight that would trigger a massive consumer revolt. Instead, it happens in tiny, quiet increments. They swap a premium oil for industrially processed soybean oil 1/4. 6 months later, they quietly reduce the egg content to the absolute federal minimum. Finally, they inject laboratory-engineered modified food starches and synthetic preservatives like EDTA just to mimic the thick texture of real food and extend the shelf life for years. They keep the nostalgic packaging, they keep the vintage fonts, they keep the heartwarming origin stories on the jar, but they are legally simulating mayonnaise, not making it. They are betting that your brand loyalty will override your ingredient literacy. Today, I am going to expose the 5 mayonnaise brands you must immediately throw in the trash and reveal the 5 authentic brands that actually respect your family's health. Let's open the jars. Number 1 on our blacklist, Hellmann's The Great American Betrayal. Let's talk about that iconic blue and cream label sitting proudly in refrigerators since 1905. Richard Hellmann, a German immigrant, started selling his wife's homemade mayonnaise in small wooden boats from his New York City deli counter. Customers loved it so much he began jarring it, eventually making it the best-selling mayonnaise in America. That history is genuine. But what happened next is the dark chapter they intentionally leave off their nostalgic packaging. In 2000, Unilever, a multinational conglomerate that manufactures Dove soap and Axe body spray, acquired the Hellmann's brand for $2.3 billion. When a corporate giant pays that kind of money, they have exactly one ruthless agenda: replace every high-quality ingredient with a cheaper alternative without killing market share. Today, Hellmann's real mayonnaise relies on soybean oil as its primary fat. This is one of the most heavily processed, industrially refined oils in the American food supply. Because this low-grade oil degrades so rapidly, Unilever must pump the jar full of calcium disodium EDTA, a synthetic chemical preservative designed solely to stop the cheap oil from turning rancid before it reaches retail shelves. Without this harsh chemical intervention, their soybean oil would develop horrific off-flavors within mere weeks. To cover up the flat, lifeless taste of these budget ingredients, they inject natural flavors, a deceptive FDA catch-all category representing thousands of laboratory-created compounds designed to trick your taste buds. The jar still proudly declares real mayonnaise in the exact same vintage fonts that built your family's trust over generations. Legally, it meets the bare minimum regulatory definition. But if you've noticed a thinner consistency or a weird rancid aftertaste recently, you are not crazy. The authentic formula your grandmother trusted is dead, replaced entirely by a highly profitable chemical simulation. Number 2 on our blacklist, Kraft Real Mayo, an absolute masterclass in legal deception. Kraft has perfected a highly cynical corporate art form, making the product name do all the heavy lifting while the actual jar delivers almost nothing of value. That word real, prominently plastered in massive letters across the front label, is not a promise of culinary quality. It is not a badge of traditional production. It is nothing more than a bureaucratic designation. By current FDA standards, this engineered mixture technically skirts the absolute minimum requirements to be legally classified as mayonnaise. Kraft purposely exploits that word, knowing full well that 95% of busy consumers will mistake a legal loophole for a guarantee of authenticity. Turn the jar around, and the betrayal is printed right there in black and white. The foundation of this sauce is that same highly processed, industrially refined soybean oil used across the cheapest mass-market condiments. But look closely at the formulation hierarchy. Eggs, the single most defining. Essential component of true mayonnaise are listed third. They sit pathetically behind both oil and water. Kraft is calculatingly using the bare minimum egg content demanded by federal law, and not one single egg more. So, how do they bridge the massive gap between the rich, creamy emulsion that adequate eggs would create and the thin, watery liquid that minimal eggs produce? They pump the jar full of modified food starch. This is a cheap, laboratory-produced thickener specifically engineered to trick your mouth. It mimics the luxurious texture of an egg-rich sauce without providing the cost, the nutrition, or the authentic flavor of actual eggs. Here is the devastating real-world consequence that will ruin your summer cookout. That modified food starch is designed to perform in climate-controlled manufacturing environments, not actual home cooking. When you mix Kraft Mayo into your signature potato salad and it sits outside in the 85-degree July heat, that starch begins to catastrophically break down at the molecular level. The fake thickness vanishes. The artificial emulsion separates into a watery, curdled, unappetizing mess that makes the dish look completely ruined. Home cooks see this disaster, blame their own culinary skills, and stop trying. But the failure was never your cooking. It was the fact that you were sold a cheap, mayonnaise-flavored paste designed solely to maximize profit margins. Number 3 on our blacklist is going to hurt more than the others, particularly if you are from the South. Duke's, the ultimate nostalgia exploitation. For decades, Duke's didn't just build a condiment brand, they built a culinary belief system based on food integrity. Eugenia Duke started making her legendary mayonnaise in 1,917 inches Greenville, South Carolina. Her famous mantra, "No sugar, no compromise," became a philosophical statement about what real food should be. Duke's built a regional religion around being the authentic choice that refused to sell out. But here is the heartbreaking reality that loyal customers do not know. In 2017, the brand was sold to Falfurrias Capital Partners, a private equity firm. Private equity firms do not acquire beloved regional brands because they respect Southern culinary tradition. They acquire them because their analysts identify a fiercely loyal customer base combined with massive opportunities to slash production costs. They see consumers who buy based on blind trust rather than ingredient analysis. The systematic degradation was swift. Today, Duke's relies on the exact same industrially processed, highly inflammatory soybean oil used by every other cheap mass-market brand. They pump the jar with potassium sorbate, a synthetic chemical preservative. Worst of all, the critical egg-yolk ratio has been quietly slashed to the absolute legal floor to lower per-unit costs, leaving a texture that is noticeably thinner and stripped of its rich heritage. Yet, the no-sugar claim remains prominently displayed. It is technically accurate, but it now acts as a cynical marketing smokescreen. That single honest claim provides brilliant cover for every other cheap ingredient substitution. They deliberately kept the charming mason jar aesthetic and Eugenia's heartwarming origin story to keep you buying, while completely gutting the actual formula. For families who have fiercely defended this brand for decades, this is nothing less than a cultural betrayal wrapped up in nostalgic packaging. Number 4 on our blacklist is the ultimate legal loophole, Miracle Whip. Let's be absolutely clear right from the start, Miracle Whip cannot legally call itself mayonnaise. That single regulatory fact tells you everything you need to know about what this engineered product actually is, versus what Kraft has spent the last 90 years training American consumers to believe. By strict FDA standards, a product must contain a minimum of 65% oil by weight to earn the classification of mayonnaise. Miracle Whip falls so drastically below that critical threshold that federal law forces them to label it as a dressing, yet Kraft brilliantly positions it directly in the mayonnaise aisle, deliberately placing it physically adjacent to actual mayonnaise to guarantee you make the false visual association. But here is the terrifying reality of that chemical substitution. When a corporate manufacturer drastically reduces the oil and egg content to slash production costs, they still have to fill the physical volume of that jar with something else. In Miracle Whip's case, that something else is cheap water and massive quantities of high fructose corn syrup. A single tablespoon contains 2 grams of added sugar, compared to absolute zero in authentic mayonnaise. For anyone managing diabetes or actively trying to reduce their family's sugar intake, this hidden substitution is medically significant. Consider a standard summer weekend: 4 tablespoons in Saturday's potato salad, 3 in Sunday's coleslaw, and a couple more smeared on Monday's leftover sandwiches. By Tuesday, your family has unknowingly consumed 22 grams of added sugar, nearly the entire American Heart Association's daily limit for women, all from a condiment they believed was savory. Read the ingredient panel. Water, soybean oil, and high fructose corn syrup completely dominate the list. Eggs, the single defining ingredient of real mayonnaise, pathetically appear sixth. Kraft has spent 9 decades masterfully conditioning Americans to feed their families a highly processed, synthetic sugar paste while convincing them it is mayonnaise. Number 5 on our blacklist represents the absolute safety floor of the American food industry: great value. Let me be perfectly clear right from the start: this is not a criticism of budget shopping or families trying to save money. This is a factual, scientific description of what happens when every single corporate production decision is driven by one terrifying question. What is the absolute cheapest possible method to manufacture a white paste that technically passes federal classification requirements? The foundation of great value mayonnaise is the lowest possible grade of soybean oil available on the global bulk commodity market. This is the industrial runoff that premium brands outright reject and mid-tier brands actively avoid. To maximize yield and cost efficiency, this bottom barrel oil is processed at extreme temperatures and violently refined using the harshest chemical solvents. The egg content is then microscopically calibrated to meet the precise legal minimum required by the FDA to call it mayonnaise and not a single drop more. Without enough real eggs or quality oil to create a genuine, stable emulsion, the resulting liquid is a watery mess. How do they fix it? They pump it full of cellulose gum. That is a cheap dietary additive, literally derived from chemically processed wood pulp. They are using wood pulp to artificially mimic the luxurious, natural creaminess of real food. Furthermore, because these bottom-tier ingredients oxidize and degrade so rapidly, the product requires a massive, aggressive chemical intervention just to survive on the shelf, resulting in a dangerously heavy preservative load. When you do the math, the total savings across an entire summer of barbecues amounts to perhaps $8 to $12 for a typical household. You are trading $10 to feed your family a chemically preserved, wood pulp thickened paste instead of real food. Do the plate test at home. This product won't even hold its shape for 10 seconds because it is fundamentally not the food its label claims it to be. Before I show you the 5 mayonnaise brands that are actually still worth buying, the ones I personally trust on my own family's table, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If this kind of deep dive investigation helps you protect your family's health and see exactly what is hiding in your refrigerator, we expose the truth about your food every single week. Now let's get the chemical pastes out of here and look at the real food you should be buying. Let's turn to the brands that actually respect your health, starting with our new standard bearer, Primal Kitchen. Founded by Mark Sisson in 2015, this brand was built by asking one revolutionary question: what would mayonnaise look like if a company used the best possible oil available instead of the cheapest industrial sludge they could legally get away with? The answer is a masterpiece of clean eating. The foundation here is cold-pressed avocado oil, which is minimally processed and packed with the exact heart-healthy monounsaturated fats that cardiologists actively recommend. Turn the jar around and the ingredient panel is an absolute breath of fresh air. There are exactly 6 components: avocado oil, organic eggs, organic egg yolks, organic vinegar, sea salt, and organic rosemary extract. There are no modified food starches, no hidden sugars, and 0 synthetic chemicals. The brilliance here lies in that organic rosemary extract. It acts as a powerful, natural antioxidant, doing the exact same preservation work that harsh, synthetic chemicals like calcium disodium EDTA do in the cheap brands, but it achieves this completely naturally without any toxic intervention. Because it relies on genuine organic egg yolks to create a real, traditional emulsion, it passes the plate test beautifully, holding a firm, rich texture that won't melt into a watery mess in the summer heat. You are paying a premium, but you are not comparing equivalent products. You are comparing real, nourishing food to a chemically engineered simulation. Number 2 on our whitelist of authentic brands, Sir Kensington's The Ethical Reformation of the Condiment Aisle. Launched in 2010 by two college students, this brand was built on a premise that honestly shouldn't be considered radical. What if a mass-market mayonnaise was actually manufactured from genuinely wholesome ingredients instead of just relying on deceptive marketing imagery? To achieve this, Sir Kensington's completely rejects the cheap, chemically extracted oils used by corporate giants. Instead, their classic mayonnaise is built on a foundation of expeller-pressed sunflower oil. That term expeller-pressed is absolutely crucial. It means the oil is extracted mechanically through sheer physical pressure, entirely avoiding the toxic hexane chemical solvents that industrial brands rely on to ruthlessly maximize their extraction yields. Combine that clean, neutral-tasting oil with certified free-range eggs, crisp distilled vinegar, and real lemon juice, and you get a flavor profile that is beautifully light. It is designed to lift and enhance the other ingredients in your dish rather than heavily competing with them. But the real magic happens when you actually cook with it, because this emulsion is forged from real, high-quality eggs rather than cheap modified food starches. Its structural integrity is unmatched. When you fold this mayonnaise into hot potatoes for a summer salad, it refuses to separate, weep, or curdle. It completely eliminates that watery culinary disaster that so many home cooks mistakenly blame on their own technique. Sir Kensington's proves that when you use authentic ingredients, your food performs flawlessly under pressure. Number 3 on our list of truly authentic brands is Chosen Foods, which perfectly occupies the sweet spot between uncompromising premium ingredients and sustainable everyday pricing. In a supermarket aisle saturated with deceptive marketing, Chosen Foods stands out for what they absolutely refuse to do. One of the most cynical tricks in the condiment industry today is to proudly slap avocado oil in massive letters on the front label, only to quietly dilute it with cheap, highly processed soybean oil on the back to ruthlessly slash production costs. Chosen Foods refuses to play that corporate shell game. Their mayonnaise is crafted using 100% pure, unblended avocado oil. Period. When you examine their relentlessly clean ingredient panel, you will only find 5 simple items: pure avocado oil, cage-free eggs and egg yolks, distilled vinegar, sea salt, and natural rosemary extract for preservation. But where this brand truly shines is in its culinary execution. The flavor profile is exceptionally clean and genuinely neutral. The avocado oil does not aggressively dominate your palate. Instead, it delivers a deeply rich, creamy, and substantial texture without ever feeling heavy or greasy. The most compelling argument for Chosen Foods, however, is the actual math. The price gap between this pristine real food product and an industrial, chemically engineered soybean paste is usually less than $1 per jar. For less than 4 quarters, you are upgrading your family from minimum content eggs and commodity oil to cage-free eggs and premium ingredients. It is an incredibly tiny investment that guarantees a flawless, authentic emulsion that will never separate or ruin your family's meals. Number 1 on our list of authentic brands, and the undisputed Mediterranean standard, Spectrum Organics. Since 1986, long before organic became a trendy marketing buzzword, Spectrum has been a pioneer in production commitment and complete supply chain transparency. Their olive oil mayonnaise is a profound return to the ancient culinary traditions of the Mediterranean, where the simple combination of high-quality eggs and cold-pressed olive oil has been a dietary staple for centuries. What sets Spectrum apart is their uncompromising organic certification, which covers every single link in the supply chain. This means you are guaranteed a product free from pesticide residues, synthetic fertilizers, or GMO-derived shortcuts. But the true scientific brilliance of this mayonnaise lies in the olive oil itself. Unlike the industrial soybean oils that require heavy chemical intervention to stay edible, high-quality olive oil is packed with natural antioxidants called polyphenols. These organic compounds provide a built-in preservation system that keeps the oil fresh and stable completely on its own. As a result, Spectrum has no need for calcium disodium EDTA or any other synthetic stabilizers. You are getting a product preserved by nature, not by a laboratory. The flavor profile is distinct and sophisticated. The earthy, peppery notes of the olive oil come through subtly, adding a depth and complexity that no industrial seed oil could ever hope to replicate. It offers a rich, clean texture that performs beautifully on the plate and in your body. It is mayonnaise as it was meant to be. A simple, nourishing recipe made from real ingredients that you can actually trust. The modern supermarket is a museum of engineered deception. We walk down the aisles, comforted by the familiar logos, vintage fonts, and heartwarming origin stories of the brands our parents and grandparents trusted. But the uncomfortable truth that most families have yet to realize is that the social contract between food manufacturers and consumers has been fundamentally shattered. What sits on our grocery store shelves and ultimately in our refrigerators and pantries is no longer food in the traditional sense. It is a highly profitable, chemically stabilized simulation of nourishment. After spending countless weeks investigating the dark reality behind the food industry's most iconic condiments and staples, a chilling pattern has emerged. The items we use to feed our loved ones have been hijacked. The core message we must confront is that the industrial food system now operates on a single, ruthless directive to maximize shareholder value by systematically degrading the quality of what we eat. This is not an accident of mass production. It is a meticulously calculated corporate strategy. Multinational conglomerates and private equity firms target beloved, family-owned regional brands specifically for their deep-rooted customer loyalty. Once acquired, these corporate giants initiate a quiet, spreadsheet-driven process of recipe optimization. They strip away the expensive, authentic ingredients, the real eggs, the cold-pressed oils, the genuine wood smoke, the slow-cured meats, and replace them with the cheapest industrial alternatives available on the global commodity market. They swap nutrient-dense fats for highly refined, inflammatory seed oils. They use high-fructose corn syrup to mask the blandness of inferior base ingredients, and they inject laboratory-engineered modified food starches and synthetic preservatives to artificially recreate the texture and shelf life of real food. The heritage on the label remains identical, but the substance inside the packaging has been completely hollowed out. From this investigation, a profound personal viewpoint emerges. Brand loyalty in the 21st century is not just obsolete, it is actively dangerous. We have been culturally conditioned to trust the bold, comforting claims plastered across the front of the packaging, words like real, uncured, original, and sugar-free. Yet, these are no longer promises of culinary integrity. They are brilliantly crafted legal loopholes. The regulatory bodies we assume are protecting our health only enforce an absolute safety floor, allowing corporations to engineer products that technically meet the bare minimum legal classification while delivering zero actual nutritional value. My stance is that nostalgia is being actively weaponized against us. When a mother buys a bottle of a legacy mayonnaise or barbecue sauce, she believes she is purchasing a staple of her childhood to share with her children. Instead, she is unknowingly funding a chemical shell game. We are trading the long-term metabolic health of our families to subsidize the profit margins of chemical and food conglomerates. Furthermore, we internalize the failures of these engineered products. When our summer potato salad weeps into a watery mess, or our barbecue ribs burn into a bitter, black crust, we blame our own culinary skills. We must realize that these are not cooking failures. They are the inevitable chemical breakdowns of cheap, synthetic food alternatives that were never designed to withstand the thermal realities of an actual kitchen. However, recognizing this systemic deception is not a cause for despair. It is the ultimate catalyst for empowerment. The solution to this betrayal lies entirely in our own hands, applying specific, actionable strategies every time we walk into a store. The first and most critical defense is what I call the 180-degree rule. You must completely ignore the front of the package. It is nothing more than a billboard for corporate marketing. Turn the item around and read the black and white ingredient list. If the list reads like a chemistry textbook, put it back on the shelf. The second specific solution is developing ruthless ingredient literacy. We must train ourselves to spot the industrial shortcuts, soybean and canola oils, high fructose corn syrup, artificial flavors, and deceptive words like modified, hydrolyzed, or natural flavors. Real food does not require a laboratory to exist. You must actively seek out products with short lists of recognizable components, cold-pressed avocado oil, real egg yolks, apple cider vinegar, and actual spices. The third and most vital solution requires a fundamental paradigm shift in how we perceive financial value in the grocery store. Yes, authentic brands crafted by independent manufacturers cost significantly more upfront. But we must stop looking at the price tag in isolation. We are not comparing two identical jars of food. We are comparing real, biologically compatible nourishment against an engineered inflammatory paste. The extra few dollars spent over a month of groceries is not an expense. It is the cheapest, most effective preventative health insurance you will ever buy for your family. In the end, taking back control of our food is the most profound act of self-care and family protection available to us. Cooking for our loved ones is a sacred act of nurturing, and the ingredients we choose should honor that trust. The corporations betting that our complacency will override our common sense have underestimated us. By voting with our wallets, by refusing to buy into the legal simulations of the foods we love, we send an undeniable message. We demand transparency. We demand traditional craftsmanship. We demand food that builds health rather than destroying it. It is time to clear the chemical illusions from our pantries and return to eating real food. The choice is no longer just about taste. It is about defending the vitality, the integrity, and the future of the people sitting at our dinner tables.